Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. We start the news bulletin from Pakistan, where Prime Minister Imran Khan has said national unity and compassion are the key under such circumstances. Addressing parliamentarians through video link, Khan said all the political parties, provinces and citizens will lead the country to victory against the diseases. Khan said Pakistan doesn't have a single coronavirus case that was imported from China. He also said the army and Balochistan governments have made great efforts in taking care of pilgrims coming from Iran. Khan stressed that decisions must not be made under fear, saying if Pakistan has to win the fight against the virus, everyone will have to come together. Pakistan has reported 28 new cases of COVID-19, bringing its tally to 1,000. Meanwhile, the first batch of the medical supplies donated by the Jack Ma Foundation and the Alibaba Foundation has arrived in Pakistan. Meanwhile, Spain's coronavirus death toll has overtaken that of China, rising to over 3,400 after 738 people died in the past 24 hours. Spain has entered the 11th day of an unprecedented lockdown to curb the epidemic, which has now infected over 47,000 people. Iran has also announced 143 new deaths from the virus, raising the death toll to 2,077 in one of the world's worst hit countries. The Iranian Health Ministry said the total number of the people infected with the coronavirus has climbed to over 27,000. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia's King Salman bin Abdulaziz has barred all the entries or exits from Riyadh and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina to contain the virus. The kingdom has reported one death and 767 confirmed coronavirus cases so far. In a related development, the World Health Organization has warned the US is at the risk of becoming a next epicenter of the new coronavirus pandemic. The number of infection cases across the US has surged to almost 55,000 with nearly 800 deaths. As the global death toll jumps to nearly 19,000 and infections increase to over 422,000, India has locked down 1.3 billion people for 21 days. More in this report.
With around 3 billion people confined to their homes, the spread of the fatal new coronavirus is accelerating, infecting another 100,000 over in just 2 days. France has become the 5th country to cross 1,000 coronavirus deaths threshold after China, Italy, Iran, and Spain. Meanwhile, South Korea has imposed strict border checks on visitors from Europe, China, Italy, and Iran. Australia has also announced a new corporate task force focusing on redeploying workers and equipment and seeks to protect critical supply chains during the pandemic.
That's why today I'm announcing the establishment of a National COVID-19 Coordination Commission. That commission's job, put simply, is to solve problems. Problems that require the private sector working together with the private sector. CEOs to talk to CEOs and to be engaged with by CEOs.
To treat patients, medical workers in China have been using extracorporeal membrane oxygenation machines to treat critical patients. Doctors and medics from US, UK, and Germany held an online meeting with their Chinese counterparts.
We are very glad to share our frontline experience, which we have gained by artists' efforts without counterparts overseas to help them learn more about the disease and how to treat critically ill patients, so that they can quickly adapt to the situation and take timely and effective measures in the treatment.
China revealed that the number of silent carriers showing no symptoms could be as high as 30%, higher and above from WHO's estimates.
Meanwhile, business activities across the world have collapsed as more and more countries go into lockdown.
According to business media group IHS Markit, Eurozone's Purchasing Managers Index plummeted to a record low at about 31.5 in March. In France, services activity fell to a record low and manufacturing saw its steepest drop since 2008's global financial crisis. Meanwhile, China's fiscal revenue dropped about 10% year-on-year in the first 2 months of 2020. China's fiscal spending also dropped about 3% year-on-year despite a surge in health expenditure to fight the pandemic. Deepening economic uncertainty is weighing heavily on local currency bond markets of emerging East Asian economies. Asian Development Bank said foreign investment and sector activities are on the downside, coupled with ongoing trade issues. The bank said the uncertainty has resulted in record equity market losses in the region, has weakened currencies against the US dollar, and widened credit default swap spreads.
In Kabul, 25 people have been killed and 8 others wounded after ISIS gunmen and suicide bombers stormed a Sikh religious complex. The Interior Ministry said Afghan security forces have killed all the attackers several hours after the assault. In a statement, the ministry spokesman said some 150 people were inside the complex at the time of the attack. He said 80 people were rescued following the attack. Amnesty International said that local authorities should protect minorities and their places of worship in Afghanistan. Negotiating teams from Taliban, Kabul and the US and Qatar will hold a second round of talks in Doha today. Taliban spokesperson Sohail Shaheen says the release of 5,000 prisoners under the Doha peace deal is the top agenda of the video conference. The prisoner swap was scheduled to happen in early March, but political uncertainty in Kabul has derailed the process. Earlier this week, the Taliban and Kabul discussed the same issue in a meeting, the first interaction between the two sides since 29th of February. After the first discussion, US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said prisoners released by both sides would be an important step in the peace process. He said all the sides conveyed their commitment to a reduction in violence, intra-Afghan talks, and a permanent ceasefire. In Chad, Boko Haram has killed 92 soldiers in an attack on a military base in the western Lak province. Officials say 42 others were wounded in the raid, while the militants destroyed 24 army vehicles. President Idris Deby said 7-hour-long assault was the deadliest attack in the country's history. Officials say the terrorists captured military arms and escaped in speedboats. Boko Haram's insurgency started in 2009 in northeastern Nigeria and has since spread to neighboring Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. A UN report says Boko Haram terrorists have killed over 30,000 people in a decade. In Libya, General Khalifa Haftar's eastern forces have wounded 6 people after shelling a prison in the capital Tripoli. The UN-recognized Government of National Accord says Haftar's forces attacked Al-Ruwaimi prison in the town of Anzara. Libya's Justice Ministry says 420 inmates are imprisoned at the targeted site. It said Haftar's forces have launched an offensive on Anzara for the 4th consecutive day. The ministry called on the international community to immediately intervene and stop rocket attacks in the region. Meanwhile, the UN mission in Libya has condemned the repeated shelling of the town's civilian neighborhoods. Libya has been torn apart by a civil war between the GNA and the Libyan National Army since April last year. Syria has accused Turkey-backed rebels of violating the Idlib ceasefire agreement between Ankara and Moscow. State media said the rebels fired several rocket shells in addition to sniper fire in the northwestern region. It said rebel forces breached the cessation of hostilities agreement. State media said the military units responded to the fire, causing casualties among the rebels. Meanwhile, the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces have agreed to establish a ceasefire amid the coronavirus pandemic. The Kurd forces said all the parties in the Syrian conflict should support UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' initiative for a universal ceasefire. On Monday, Guterres called on the international community to stop all the conflicts around the globe to battle the pandemic. Palestine says Israel's treatment of Palestinian workers under the threat of the coronavirus pandemic is racist and inhumane. Government spokesperson Ibrahim Melhem called on Palestinian workers not to go for work in occupied West Bank. Earlier, Israeli officials threw a COVID-19 positive Palestinian worker on a roadside despite his critical condition. The worker later was transferred to a special center in the West Bank by paramedics from the Palestinian Red Cross. The Palestinian government called on Israel to ensure humanitarian conditions for around 50,000 citizens. Saudi Arabia's King Salman will chair an extraordinary virtual summit of the group of 20 major economies tomorrow. In a statement, officials said the emergency meeting was called to discuss a global response to the coronavirus pandemic. The statement said King Salman will discuss the outbreak's impact on humans and the economy, while leaders including Russian President Vladimir Putin will attend the summit. The leaders from other affected countries, including Spain, Jordan, Singapore, and Switzerland, will also join G20 members. Last week, Saudi Arabia called for the virtual summit following criticism that the group has been slow to address the global crisis. In India, the protesters against the Citizenship Act have vowed to carry on their fight despite being forcefully removed from the demonstration sites. Yesterday, Indian authorities uprooted sit-in sites in Shaheen Bagh, Jafarabad and Jamia Millia in capital Delhi. Talking to media, protesters said they will continue sit-ins in full force once the coronavirus pandemic is over. The Shaheen Bagh organizers said since the outbreak of coronavirus, the protest was continued symbolically. They said this action by authorities will further intensify the protest and may lead to agitation in the area. Former Chief Minister of occupied Kashmir, Mehbooba Mufti, has urged the Indian government to release young Kashmiris. India has arrested around 13,000 minors from the valley for protesting against the revocation of Article 370 on August the 5th last year. In a tweet, Mufti said trauma for those boys' families, especially due to COVID-19 outbreak, is unimaginable. The former Chief Minister said the young boys have been shifted in jails across India, increasing the anxiety for their families. Meanwhile, Mufti's daughter said there are reports that her mother will be released from detention soon. The valley is reeling under Indian curfew and communications blackout for the last 234 days. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The U.S. Senate and the White House have reached a deal over the $2 trillion coronavirus aid package. White House official Eric Olin confirmed the agreement on the massive economic stimulus bill after days of negotiations. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said the upper house will vote on the bill on Wednesday. The package is expected to include a $500 billion fund for hard-hit industries and direct payments up to $3,000 to millions of U.S. families. It also allocates $350 billion for the small business loans, $250 billion in unemployment aid, and $75 billion for hospitals. The money in the legislation exceeds what the U.S. spends on national defense, scientific research, highway construction, and other discretionary programs. Pakistan has sought clarity from the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation over the administration and utilization of its COVID-19 emergency fund. Said during the 15th March SAARC conference, the rules regarding the administration and utilization of funds are yet to be shared. Talking to his Bangladeshi counterpart, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi asked for the funds to be placed under SAARC Secretary General. Qureshi said the modalities for its utilization should be finalized through consultations at the earliest. He expressed Pakistan's readiness to host SAARC Health Ministers Conference to enhance cooperation. He proposed a video conference should be organized first in view of the prevailing situation of the pandemic. Teenage climate activist Greta Thunberg says she has recovered from the suspected novel coronavirus infection. Thunberg detailed her experience in a post on social media platform Instagram. Thunberg said she went into self-isolation 2 weeks ago after returning from a trip around Central Europe. She described developing symptoms alongside her father about 10 days ago as she felt tired, had shivers, developed a sore throat and cough. The Fridays for Future Movement's founder said despite having symptoms, she was not tested for the virus. Thunberg said it was extremely likely that she had contracted the virus given the combined symptoms and circumstances. Amid the global pandemic, Thunberg's climate activists have taken their weekly actions digitally using the Twitter hashtag ClimateStrikeOnline. The new coronavirus pandemic has postponed or cancelled a number of events and celebrations all around the world. But birthdays are supposedly events that can neither be delayed nor called off. Find out how the children are celebrating their birthdays amid the pandemic in this report.
When a preschooler Harry was told his birthday party would be cancelled due to coronavirus lockdown, a London-based drama group came to the rescue. With an online alternative, Harry got his Frozen celebration with all his friends and family watching via multi-screen, and he even had a happy birthday sung to him in unison.
Happy birthday. Normal parties are at somewhere else, not at home, but if there's germs crawling around, you can't go outside, so we have to stay indoors.
Entertainers and actors Jessica Kingsley and Joshua Diffley of Magical Quest dressed as characters from the classy Disney family. Both were thrilled at the success of the new video chat-based celebration.
They weren't as distracted because when you're at a party there are balloons and things happening all around, but they were really focused. I guess they're very used to looking at their screens.
Yes.
Goggle vision, but it was like they were really focused on us. It did feel really like performing. It was performing. It was performing.
I don't know what you were doing. I was definitely performing.
Harry's parents says they just did not manage to have a party, but it was so special that no one has ever done that before.
Eurozone finance ministers have backed a proposal letting EU governments apply for a credit line worth 2% of their GDP to fight the COVID-19 fallout. But the final decision on the use of the massive $442 billion European Stabilization Fund is to be taken only by the EU leaders at their tele-summit tomorrow. The ministers agreed that an enhanced conditions credit line will be available to all the Eurozone countries, but not all 27 EU states. Getting such a credit line would entitle governments to potentially unlimited European Central Bank bond buying. Debt-ridden countries Italy, Greece and Spain insist the credit line from the ESM should be without any conditions, while Germany, Finland and Netherlands said money cannot be lent with no strings attached.
Support to consider a pandemic crisis support safeguard based on an existing ESM precautionary instrument, such as the enhanced conditions credit line. This would provide an additional line of defense for the euro and work as an insurance to protect us against this unfolding crisis.
Eurogroup President Mario Centeno said more work is still required on the details of an enhanced conditions credit line. Now moving on, airlines from across the globe have doubled their estimate of 2020 revenue losses from the coronavirus pandemic to more than $250 billion. Director General, International Air Transport Association, Alexander Dijuniak, said the industry is an emergency situation. Dijuniak urged the governments to expedite bailout packages to rescue the air transport industry. Airlines worldwide have had to ground most of their fleets amid travel restrictions and the fears of contagion. One of Europe's biggest airlines, Ryanair, has suggested going months without flying, among several other airlines. Dijuniak said without government support, up to half of airlines face possible bankruptcy in the coming weeks.
Now that the crisis has expanded by the end of February, we have something like 2 months or slightly less ahead of us in terms of cash. After that, we will run out of cash. So we desperately need cash injection in our industry for an amount and in various for an amount of $200 billion US. We have estimated as a cash need for the airline.
280 airlines strong IATA said signs of deep recession could delay a recovery in airline travel, in contrast with the previous epidemics. Now moving on, European markets are trading higher after US senators agreed to approve massive economic rescue bill, unlocking $2 trillion worth of funds. London's FTSE 100 is trading over 3.5%. CAC 40 in Paris has gained over 3%. Frankfurt's DAX has surged over 3%. Engineering multinational AG stocks jumped over 22%. In Asia, Nikkei 225 led the gains, closing over 8% after index heavyweight fast retailing stocks jumped about 9%. Seoul's Kospi gained about 6%, while Shanghai Composite has gained over 2%. Meanwhile, international benchmarked Brent crude oil price has surged over 1%. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.